And hello to everybody who is watching us on Facebook Live. This is Keep the Ghost Light On from the Sherman Playhouse with myself, Steve Stott, and Robin Frome, my co-host. There's Robin. We've got a really packed show for you tonight. We've got some really A-grade talent to come and tell you all about what they've been doing in their careers and how the current situation is affecting them. We have Marika Becz, we have Bob Goodman, we have Rik Walter, and we have Lindsay O'Neil. Now, Lindsay, we're going to chat to Lindsay first. Lindsay, I got to know Lindsay as she directed me. I was a pig. I was one of three pigs in a highly successful production of Shrek, which was great fun at Musicals at Richter in Danbury last summer. So that's how I got to know Lindsay. Lindsay is a Broadway performer, musical theatre performer. She's toured. She's a vocal coach. She's a lecturer. But I'm not going to tell you all that. I'll let Lindsay talk to you. So, Lindsay, if you'd like to unmute yourself. There you go. You're unmuted. Hey, so hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, just give us your background. How you got into to theatre, performing. Where your career has taken you, any highlights, and how things are going for you at the moment with COVID?
Sure. So I grew up a pretty musical kid. I played the piano. I started learning the French horn, and in about 8th grade, I started taking private voice lessons. I always used to sing around the house growing up, and I think the story is my grandmother said to my mom one day, you know, Lindsay has a pretty good voice. And there just so happened to be in this small town that I grew up in central New York, this former opera singer. She fell in love and married this man who lived in the next town over from me. So I ended up going to see her, and I sang for her, and she said that she would accept me into her voice studio. And those next 5 years, right from 8th grade to high school graduation, my world just really shifted in probably the best possible way, right? She showed me that, yes, I was pretty good at singing, and really showed me what music is. So I studied as a classical singer. My training is in opera. So after high school, I pursued opera performance for my undergraduate and master's degree. My master's schooling brought me to New York City, which was so lovely. And growing up, I always would be in community theater musicals and go see shows in New York with my mom. So musical theater was always such a love and a passion. And I found myself often doing both, you know, operatic endeavors while in college, and also musical theater ones as well. And then towards the end of my master's degree, I just started getting work in musical theater. I think I booked the tour of Cats right as my master's was completing. So I said, okay, I'll go do that. I'll travel the country and wear spandex and a tail, and they paid me to do that, which I still think is crazy. So since that, I just ended up finding professional work in musical theater, and I just said yes to that path. And I loved every second of that, and I'm very lucky to say that I've made my living in music, in performing, and I'm also an educator now. So it's still boggles my mind that I'm able to live a little bit differently now that COVID's happened, but to really do something for a profession that I just am so passionate about. I think that's so important. So yes, my performing career has, taken me to Broadway and off Broadway and tours of shows, and that's been so lovely. So in addition to being a performer, I'm also an educator. I have always taught privately, private voice. So I own and operate my own private voice studio, Lindsay O'Neil Vocal Studio. And that's been really lovely to, when I was in New York, I would teach students in New York, and I now live just a little bit north of New York, so I'm finding, where I live now in the Hudson Valley, that there are still so many people who are super talented, like you, Steve.
Oh, thank you very much.
That just really share this passion for music and singing, and wanting to do it, either at the professional level or just for the personal enjoyment. So I teach privately, and I'm also on the faculty at Marist College, which is a small liberal arts college right here in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I lecture music there, and I also teach private voice. So thinking back to like the little girl who was just singing to the radio, to think that my life has been so enriched and so fulfilled by music and what it has brought me, and all of the directions that it has so far. And I'm sure it will have many more twists and turns in my upcoming years. It's been a really exciting journey so far. And, circling it back to, well, how are we affected today, based on what's happening in our industries with COVID. It's been an interesting transition, I would say. The performing aspect of my profession is almost non-existent, right? Where it's shut down, and it's so tough to see. It's so tough to not be able to pursue that avenue of my profession. And it's tough to see from my friends and colleagues who work so hard, have trained so hard to pursue that. And it's just on hold for a little bit longer than we initially had thought. So that's challenging. And, thinking about, I'm still lucky to have my job at my college, but even that looks different, right? Just the restrictions that are in place to keep everyone safe. So we've done some interesting thinking and problem solving to really maintain delivering the curriculum to our students in a very unique fashion. And I would say the same goes for my private voice studio. That's been, an interesting transition, obviously hurt a little bit from COVID, right? Whether people can no longer afford lessons, or, oh my gosh, my Wi-Fi is not good enough, I can't meet with you on Zoom to sing, right? So there are lots of limitations in that regard, but you just keep going and know that hopefully on the other side of this is just a blip in what the life of a professional musician is.
Yes, that's certainly something I think Robin has expressed that. Robin has expressed that before. I think maybe that feedback is with you. So I'm going to mute you for a second and see whether it goes away. So let's see. No, that doesn't go away. Yes, that's gone away. So there must be something to it. But I will bring you back on that. I know that Robin has expressed this, that to a certain extent, this is just another way that the performing arts is struggling. You know, there's it's something else.
It's can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
So it's what I do is one-on-one, which I know Lindsay does as well. We're doing these Zoom classes, and what's interesting is when I grew up through getting training, it's always who you knew. Sure, it's where you went to college, and all of that works as well, but it's who you knew. And so now it's I know someone from Facebook that lives in Washington State that I went to high school with, who wants her son to learn about Shakespeare. And let's make it happen. So, 3 hours difference doesn't matter. We can work it out, and it just happens. So who you know, and then a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend is also incredibly hot right now, because the friend could live in Philadelphia, but the other friend could live in Las Vegas or something like that. Yep. So all of this Zoom stuff is ripe for the picking at this point. However, just as a side note, I miss the stage. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, we absolutely we all miss the stage. And Lindsay, here we go again. That's fine. Do you feel that your career as a voice coach and an educator is the mainstream of what you would be doing anyway, or are you still as equally invested in performing on stage?
Well, I've got two beautiful baby girls at home that I'm most invested in raising. So when my husband and I decided to have children, we knew that I would backpedal from the performance pursuit until, hopefully kindergarten, which is next year for Clara. So the performing opportunities are certainly still being pursued, but I have to be a little bit more selective now. Pre-family, I would say, yes, I'll go to, wherever, North Carolina, for 2 months and do this. But now it's a little different. It's like, is this a good time? Can my kids come, or, whatever. So I would say ish to your question, a little bit, just in the regards of, there's more on my plate right now. So if the job is good enough, yes, I will do that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think we'll move along. But one of the things that, again, we've found as we've gone through these sessions is that there seems to be a very definite sort of career path of performers becoming educators, performers passing on. Just as you said, Lindsay, it's great to be in that position where you're using everything that all the enthusiasm that you had growing up and going into your career, you're now able to pass it on to another generation. And it's a very interesting time to be having to do that, and having to be so innovative to achieve that, as you say. So I'm going to hand over to Robin briefly just to introduce our next guest. Don't go anywhere, Lindsay. We're going to open everything up for more discussion in a short time. But Robin, over to you to introduce our next guest.
Okay, so let's do girl, boy. And our next boy is Mr. Rik Walter, a very beautiful man. Hi, Rik.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can. So Rik and I kind of, we went to college together, but we got back together in doing a few things. I did a monologue for one of my shows, or my radio shows, which I really appreciate him doing. He also came to see The Tempest last summer with John Bergdahl, was Caliban, and I really appreciate that. And that was great that you brought your daughter there, who was going to play Prospero, I believe, in the one that she was doing. And I just, we keep our people, right? We keep these connections because we never know what's going to happen. So that's why I love when you guys come back and participate. I really appreciate it. So Rik, we went to UConn together, but you can go a little bit before that or after that. Give us some highlights of your career.
Oh, well, I won't bore anybody too much. I came from North Dakota. This wasn't quite a farm boy. I did grow up in the city, but coming out east was a whole new world for me. And coming to UConn was a very formative experience where I met you and Marika. And moving on, the natural step was New York. And when I got to New York, it scared the hell out of me. It really, truly did. I mean, I had no intention of coming to New York. I mean, I thought I'd be going back to the Midwest. At the very furthest east, I thought I'd go to Chicago. But I was planning on going to Minneapolis. Minneapolis had and still has a very vibrant theater community, Guthrie Theater, etc. More beyond that. So I thought I was going back there. But, as often happens in one's life, I followed a girl to New York, and that's how I ended up here.
Awesome.
Girl didn't stick around long, but I've been here ever since. And so I came across a lot of great experiences here, some by force, some by happenstance, some by design. Some of my proudest experiences early on were, being a member of the present company and being part of the team that helped create the first New York International Fringe Festival, and in the mid '90s. And that has come back. I've been away from that for some time, and I came back in 2016 and operated as an operations manager for a couple seasons now. Of course, COVID has affected that festival now. A lot of things have changed with the festival, but the COVID situation has, like with all festivals, all theater in this town, has essentially shut it down. But we'll get more to that. But since other things, since I moved uptown to the northern tip of Manhattan, I've gotten very involved in the arts and culture of northern Manhattan, Inwood and Washington Heights in particular, and started a theater company, co-founded a theater company up here. We've been going strong now for 10 years. Involved with the local children's theater. My daughter, you mentioned my daughter, Emma, who we sent off to Muhlenberg College this year, and whose cousin is going to Marist, Lindsay, up in Poughkeepsie. Yes, indeed. And another Pied Piper who is also going to Marist. So anyway, I'll have to tell Julia about, because she's got a gorgeous voice. Maybe she wants some lessons. So my daughter, as part of the Pied Piper's Children's Theater up here, Northern Manhattan Arts and Culture, I was administrator for. It was a not-for-profit, et cetera, et cetera. And an organization called Men Without Garages, which is just a bunch of us guys, going out and drinking beer and talking shit, So, but anyway, so I'm really kind of entrenched up here now. And my daughter, who's now at Muhlenberg studying theater, Robin, you had mentioned, we went up to see Tempest, not only because I wanted to see what you guys were doing, and you're doing some great stuff. I wanted Emma to see it because she was going to play Prospero in the coming spring or the coming fall, and shortly after that, and it was eye-opening for her. It was a good experience for her, and I think I remember telling you at the time, and of course I came up to see John Bergdahl as Taliban. That was the big draw for me.
Right.
All right, and but anyway, I told you at the time, and you took it with to heart. I mean, what you are doing in Sherman is so damn important. I mean, all of us that are living in the professional world or trying to do our professional things, when it comes right down to it, I mean, the lifeblood of the arts in our community is our quote unquote amateur associations, our community theaters that often get a little wag from people sometimes. But the point is that that's what our communities need the background we need. And what I was so excited about, Robin, with what you're doing with these Zoom sessions, both the monologue thing, Say Goodnight, Stacy, which is very witty and a wonderful program. And this, Keep the Ghost Light On. What a great program. What, keeping that, metaphorically speaking, we're here, we're talking about what we're doing to weather this storm that has devastated so many theater companies, shuttered so many theater companies, both on a regional level as well as a small resident theater level in this town and around the country. It's been devastating. My own theater company, we had to cancel. We were starting Tech Week when all this hit, and we had to make a really tough decision. It was heartbreaking. We spent a lot of money, and we just had to shut down. So we went into radio, and I can talk a little bit more about that if you want, but I'm not sure if I've overstayed my welcome on my introduction. So next question.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, your point about, just getting into a season or just getting into tech, obviously with a lot of companies, the season is the calendar year. Yeah. So by the time you get to March, you're just ramping up. You put all your publicity out there. You've done all the hard work. You spent all the money.
We moved in. We rented all the lights, and we built all the sets.
You've heated your theatre for 3 months, the coldest part of the year, and then the rug gets pulled from under. We were certainly in that position up in Sherman, and clearly, we have a lost season, and it's taken quite a while to figure out what we're doing next and where we're going forward, but we're getting there. And I think that's a story that we've heard over the last few weeks, that people are coming out of that fog with plans. And so just on that, you mentioned the radio shows. Yeah, that's another thing. Again, we've kind of heard that as a way of being able to perform, of a way of being able to produce something in an environment that you can control much more easily than a regular play. So how are you finding that, and what kind of things are you looking to produce?
Well, we had to do something. I mean, we couldn't just, we only have one major production a year, and the rest of it is side productions with reading series, multiple reading series, and local talent night kind of sponsorship. So we dusted off an old possibility from a local, again, wonderful amateur thespian in the true sense of the word. I had spoken to many years ago a local doctor. He lives in the house in the corner here, and in Inwood, New York, there's actual houses, not just apartment buildings. He lives in the corner, doctor, children's doctor, pediatrician, psychiatrist, and he is a big, huge radio fan, and he had done some amateur productions in the local cafe with local non-professional actors of the old Richard Diamond private detective series, which was played. Blake Edwards wrote the script. Blake Edwards of Pink Panther, etc. Back in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, and we just thought we wanted to do something fun. And we attached ourselves to that, and we kind of refocused funds. And this is one thing I also want to bring up. We immediately went to our funders and said, "Hey, our show's done. We can't." And there, of course, everything was canceled. And they worked with us because you can only do the same project once, right? You can't remount. So what they allowed us to do is take that money, the money that we hadn't spent yet, not very much left, focus it on this new project, the radio shows, right? And then we could reapply hopefully in the spring, to do the same, to remount or to mount. We never got to mount it, but to go into rehearsals and remount that production again based on a new grant. So the grantors know the situation. And these ones in particular, the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone and the Lower Manhattan Fund, have both worked with us in particular. We also have some generous supporters by the Miranda family, Lin-Manuel's family, who's lived up here for years. Of course, Lin grew up in Inwood. And his family has been very generous to the Uptown Arts, both the Children's Theater, the People's Theater Project, which is a very socially active theater project, outreaches with schools and senior centers, etc. Very politically active stuff. So we've got a lot of support up here, and I think that's the thing that keeps us going. I think Steve and Robin and everybody is that our funders understand it. And they want to be supportive, and they know just how tough and how important now it is to double down and believe in the art, support the arts, and do whatever they can to get us through this. Right? Because we're going to do
I agree.
We're going to do whatever we can to do it. Right? We're going to do our radio plays. We're going to do our Zoom sessions. We're going to do our readings. We're going to do whatever it can, and because we must. But we are nothing without the funders behind us and forgiving us and allowing us to trip up and fall and helping us back up. It's key. There's no other way.
I think you're right. I think the people who are interested in the arts, whether it's performing arts or other areas in the arts, they're interested because they care. Mm-hmm. You know, there's not a lot of bang for your buck investing in the arts. There's few people are going to become millionaires from some investment that they're going to get the money back from. But it's the art itself that gets generated out of that, and it's great to hear that you've got so many great people behind you who understand what's going on. The concern is how long this is going to go on, what's going to happen next, and what might need to happen to support the arts, and what are the arts going to look like in in another 6 months' time, another year's time, wherever long it takes to come back. But thank you, Rik. I've got loads more we could talk about, and we will. But I think we'll move along now, and I'm going to hand back to Robin. So thank you very much, Rik. Stay on. We'll talk more in a short while. Robin, so over to you again.
Marika.
Yes.
There she is. How are you?
Good, my dear. How are you?
Good. Marika also married an actor friend of all of ours named Joe. How's Joe?
Joe's good. Joe's upstairs.
Tell Joe hello.
I will.
Marika and I went to UConn with Rik, and we were the pesky BFA guys, right? And it was the MFA guy. Yeah. So and then last time I saw you was in your production with Julie Galdieri and John Bergdahl of right. the Scottish play. Sorry, I'm calling it that. I'm that way. But it was a beautiful, beautiful rendition with five actors, six actors.
Five
actors that were written by all of you guys as part of the theater company named
Set Collective. Set
Collective, right? Sorry, and that was on Theater Row, and just a wonderful experience. So it was great to see you at that, and then we just kept in touch. And I appreciate you doing this, but you are on the West Coast now.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. And and this is probably the only way we'll see each other. I hope not, but and then taking off. So if you can talk about your highlights and some of the questions we had asked you before and what people were talking about with the COVID would be great.
Sure. Yes, UConn is the common thread this evening for a couple of us. UConn was a really interesting beginning of an entire trajectory that, for me, that's been very eclectic. That I think I think it's kind of this way in the US. If you're an artist here, you have to know how to be scrappy, I have a friend in Paris who has a dance company, and that's all she has to do is just run her dance company. And it was an interesting experience for me to grow up in the Northeast. I'm a first generation American, so I grew up in a Hungarian household, very proud immigrant family who worked really hard. So I sort of learned the value of working hard to do anything that you want to do from a very early age. So UConn was this really wonderful blessing for me to just be able to realize that I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing with people that I really enjoy being around, and sort of finding creativity and imagination as part of a sort of identity, if you will. And so from there, it was really just focus and go. And so I did find that I loved Southern California so much and really wanted to explore film and cinema. So I, in my early 20s, shortly after UConn, I did a wee bit of work in children's theater. And then as soon as I could get out to the West Coast, I did. And found my way to graduate school at the University of California, Irvine out here, which was yet another situation where I found myself delighted to be doing what I wanted to be doing all day long with people that I really enjoyed being with. And I just found that to be such a rare thing for somebody who wanted to be a professional actor in this country. I feel like I just missed the Berkeley rep days, those days of being able to be hired into a repertory company and just actualize these roles and have that be your living. That's really what I started out really wanting to do. And then as graduate school went on, I just really found that the academic world of it, the study of it, the pulling craft apart, and then teaching it to other people, and just the deep dive into the ancient art form of it instead of the commercialized version was just a good fit for me. So after graduate school, I fell into a professorship very quickly. One of my professors and mentors from my MFA days let me know that there was a job opening at Cal State Fullerton to go full time. And so I threw my hat in the ring for that, and that happened. So I found myself as a very young tenure track professor trying to juggle an academic career full time with still trying to be a professional actor for hire in film, television, and theater. And it was quite difficult to juggle it all. So I made the commitment to continue teaching. But in my fourth year of doing that, I was sort of a couple of years away from tenure, and I had the opportunity to go co-found a theater company in central Pennsylvania. So I moved to New York, I got engaged, I got married, I co-founded this company that was affiliated with Juniata College with a dear friend of mine named Andrew Belser, who's now at the University of Arizona. And we really, those of us who formed the company, we really wanted to be sort of whatever the next generation of the Worcester Group could be. We were going to do it. And we were working with Stephanie Skira, who danced with Meredith Monk. And we were really developing some really exciting forms. And then the sort of financial supportive bottom of that dropped out. And so I was spent some time in 12 years in New York, teaching at NYU. And then Julie Galdieri, my dear friend who you mentioned, Robin, she and I just, when we met, we were both actresses of a certain mature age who wanted more juicy stuff to be happening to us. So we just said, well, why don't we make that happen? So we formed Set Collective, which is still running now. But 4 years ago, I just found that I needed to be back in the Southern California climate. New York, I thrive much more happily when I can get myself to New York and do the work I want to do there, and then come back to home base here. Because I've also found my way, these things that we fall into all the time. I have developed a sort of parallel passion in the healing arts. One of my central modalities of voice training in grad school was Fitzmaurice voice work, which is a very holistic, it's kind of like yoga on voice. It's a very deep driven body working technique, which I eventually became certified in, but I found myself really passionate about the story of the human body and how that ends up creating the story of our lives, and how the body really houses the subconscious mind, and how wellness and story and creativity and imagination all fit together. So that seems to have a better market in Southern California, I found. So it's a good fit for me. And so now I'm full-time at Cal State Stanislaus. So I'm juggling again, taking clients when I can and performing professionally when I can, and passing it on, like you say, Steve, to just try to turn that little light on in young artists who want to do this thing. And so I think that's a really, it's just incredibly exciting to have somebody trust you with their imagination and then take them into realizations of artistry. I'm not sure there's much better than that. I heard a breath in. Robin,
yeah, me. Breathe in. I was doing yoga. No, so we love what we do. We're passing it on. Here comes the wrench into the works. How did it affect you guys?
It's affected me a lot. I still have not been able to relocate to Stanislaus up to the Central Valley in California, where my campus is. So I'm teaching virtually activity classes, so voice and movement classes online, introductory acting classes online. I'll take it. It's better than not having a gig. And I find that scrappy mind has come in really handy, because it has forced me to be really creative in how I, try to reach through this thing, to get to these young people. So there's this sort of upheaval of not being able to transition into something yet. But I think beyond that, really for me, I am of the mind that artists in general are deeply sensitive people. We watch the world, we read the world, and then we make up a story about it and we show it back to the world. Like that's part of a deep calling. And so to watch what's happening in the world, there's an incredible amount of sadness and collective grief and stress and anxiety and unrest and just all of these things that are happening all at once. I think that it's really affecting us on personal and collective levels. So not only are we just trying to, keep the ghost light on, we're trying to keep the self light on, just trying to get through the day. Like, I worry about my parents. My father's 83 and he's across the country. And so it's affected me deeply on both sort of, vocational and personal levels. But I think one of the things that I'm finding that I'm doing more, that I think is being generated more, is writing. I think we're all starting to write and process. We're scurrying into our little dens wherever they are, and we're it's like, we'll be damned if we don't figure out stories about this thing too. So
absolutely. And again, Robin's smiling because he has probably been, and I know this for a fact, Robin's probably been more productive in the last 6 months than he's ever been, as far as generating new material. As you've seen from the Good Night Stacey and the monologues and the sort of projects that he's in. So I can attest to that just from watching Robin. One thing I just wanted to pick up on, the sort of the healing arts side of the work that you do. Two questions really on that. When you're dealing, are typically the clients that you deal with, are they typically from the arts, from the performing arts? Is that your main focus?
It's kind of a combination. Because of the way I bring a lot of yoga and body work, and I venture as much as I can into the esoterics of things before it gets a little bit too heady. But usually it's a combination of artists and yoga practitioners, yoga clients. And imagination comes from the same space in both of those things. So
absolutely. The second part to that really is, have you seen an increase in the need for that sort of healing arts practice? Are you seeing people who are being damaged by what's going on at the moment? Not just necessarily COVID, but as you mentioned, there's a lot of other things. Before COVID came along, we were experiencing a lot of upheaval, and a lot of movements that were happening before COVID came along. So, what's your experience of sort of how your clientele are being affected?
I think that the primary thing I've seen in the past few years is that it really is true that we have an anxiety epidemic in our culture. That anxiety and depression are that we just have to do better with figuring that out, and finding a way to get people back to stability and peacefulness. There's a kind of the positive side of the sort of American get up and go get 'em thing, is that there's competition that tends to run underneath that all the time, whether we're trying to be a better version of ourselves or we're trying to get ahead, or people don't even know what they're trying to get ahead of anymore. There's just this racing and revving that's going on all the time. And so I'm seeing people, by the time it becomes emotional, it means that it's in the body. So really just trying to restore the body back to its own biorhythm, because we just don't move as fast as the computers move. And so just trying to bring everything back into balance. Unfortunately, I've seen that really how it shows up in a general way is imbalance. Yes,
absolutely. And I know I probably speak for others of a certain age, that there's been an amount of head scratching as to why all these kids are seem to be so anxious, or seem to be having the issues that we didn't recognize we had earlier. So that's your observations kind of bear that out. It bears out the what generally we're seeing. And certainly in the arts, I think the default state is probably anxiety for a lot of performing artists anyway.
And I think creativity is an outlet. If we can harness creativity and imagination as a healing tool, then we actually can end up having someone, step into and transcend and heal their own sort of
absolutely
heal thyself, know thyself thing.
Absolutely.
So
I think Robin, I think has a question.
Right.
Observation.
Take up too much time, but Marika, I remember you were involved, and let me know if I'm wrong. Were you involved with Playwrights Horizons?
Yes, I taught at that studio for Tisch School of the Arts.
Okay, that's right, with Tisch. Now, have you heard from those people of how they're being affected by this?
A colleague of mine who I did a lot of team teaching with, who's now a voice professor at Tisch, we stay in contact. And from what I understand, it's the same everywhere, that the shutdown aspect of things, the inability to gather. I'm not really sure. Playwrights Horizons was basically, there were two very separate entities. There was the Playwrights Horizons Uptown, and then there was the Playwrights Horizons Theater School downtown. So that those two things sort of operated separately under that larger umbrella. So I'm not really sure what the Playwrights Horizons professional stage situation is at this moment, but I'm assuming it's like everybody, you know, just trying to figure out.
And
how
so
Yeah.
Tish is probably not doing any productions. They're just doing like we have a colleague that is going to Actor Studio, and everything is on Zoom, which is incredibly weird. But you know,
Yeah.
and he's got to deal with it. And
I wouldn't be surprised if you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's also happening at Tish, because of the opportunity. You know, sort of whatever the platform is, you use it, you know. So like if your family's got a barn, you go make a show in the barn. If you've got Zoom happening, you make a show on Zoom, you know.
Yeah.
You're stuck making lemonade. What are you going to do? You know.
Yeah. I have
right.
a colleague at Stanislaus who it's opening this week. They're live streaming a Zoom original production that was devised with Mike Ross and Amy Seeley, who are originally from Second City and are in Los Angeles, and educators and improvisers. So it's happening. It's just happening in these weird little boxes, and that's better than nothing, right. You know.
That's right. And we have, again, we've the range of people we've talked to, you know, it's the innovation that we're hearing about, and the fact that if you're in this box, and you touched on this, if you're in this box, you've got to find a way to reach through. You've got to find a way to teach in that structure, which means you've got to learn. You know, you can't just do what you always did, because doing what you always did doesn't apply.
Oh boy, am I learning too. I mean,
absolutely.
I am such a let's gather around the bonfire and tell stories of the dream time. You know, I'm not a tech person, so you know, there's a lot going on in my office.
Can't be touchy-feely when it's a screen. Well, thanks very much, Marika. Stay on. I'm getting themes here that are great for us to explore. So, Robin, over to you.
Okay, this gentleman I never met, and I'm so glad he's doing this. Bob Goodman, thank you for sticking around and listening to everybody. I believe I got you on LinkedIn through somebody else, doing the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend type of philosophy here. But and then you said, "This sounds cool, man. Let's see what this is all about, and let me check it out." And here you are. I really appreciate it. So if you can go through some of your highlights and your experience with COVID as well, it'd be great.
Sure, Rob, and thank you for inviting me, and welcome to all my compatriots here. Based in New York now, born and raised, however, in Miami, Florida. And when you think of Miami and South Florida, you think of theater.
Certain kind of theater.
Merv Griffin, how about that?
That's right. The only training you could get down there, unless you were at university, was, you know, the joke was there's a card table with a woman who was an extra and Gone with the Wind. She can teach you a couple of things. It'll be fun. After a while, class clown, I dig the validation. Maybe I need to do something with this. This is kind of cool. So I rose up through academia. Do not have an advanced degree, however, and then realized, Rik, you said earlier when you came to New York, you were scared to death. I wasn't so much scared to death. It's just that you got step and stuff, and it's very noisy and busy. And pardon me, excuse me. Whoa, hey. I went out west. I made a left in Atlanta, and I went across I-10 and went to LA and lived there for about a dozen years, honing my craft, and realized I had this proclivity for, even when I was doing theater and directing theater, I always had a camera in mind as to how I can capture the storytelling. And I believe it was also mentioned that we do evolve from student to artist to educator. My mentor, long gone, and many, many years ago, would direct and teach at the same time, and it left an indelible mark in me. Whether I'm working with an established veteran or a young person,
Yeah.
this collaborative, delicious thing that the more the novice, the more you want to provide a moment of creation that they can tap into, but you learn how to work back and forth, and it's been very exciting. So LA, Miami, New York, I became sort of tri-citied, nomadic. That's what we are. We go where the work is, and continued to learn, and got married, and I have one son who recently graduated from Northwestern, did not pursue theater, broadcast journalism, and he's off and running, and we're dealing with all the ups and downs here in New York. I find that the word that keeps coming back to me is reset. Resetting. How do I reset during this downtime? What can I possibly do? Well, keep that over here. About 10 years ago, I was teaching at the New School here in the city, as well as Stella, and ran into a couple of students who had sort of taken a break and were there for the summer. Well, tell me about your programs at college. Well, we do the main stages, and we do some of these things, blah, blah, blah. Any on-camera stuff. And nobody had a neck. I love when any on-camera stuff. Not really. Like talking to an oncologist. What's this? So that was sort of the boink moment of, I wonder why they're not doing more on-camera training at the college level, particularly as you get close to going out and hitting the streets here in New York or out in LA or wherever the case may be. So that was my aha moment, and that's why I created the Actors Ensemble, which essentially was to help theater folks transition into the world of camera performance. It's funny, grandmas know the difference between acting on the stage and acting for the camera. Okay, it's got to be smaller, blah, blah. Okay, but now we can connect the technique and the craft and the storytelling, and where do you stand, blocking, lights, bada bing, bada bing, all this chaos and stimuli coming at you. How do you keep control of yourself? So I began to create workshops, and I started to go out to do colleges, and I do private things here. I'm partnered with U.S. Performing Arts. It's based in San Francisco, and with some casting directors here in New York. And then March, or whenever the date was, you can't be in enclosed settings. You have to be him. Can I do this online? Well, I teach at Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and the chair said, hey, Bob, do you think you can do what you do with camera stuff online? Well, we tried and have sort of manipulated and wrangled and reset. So sure enough, there are certain things, specifically, if I may, the world of self-taping. This whole thing, this monster is just not going away. In fact, it's going to be even more prevalent moving forward. So I'm looking at my little green dot here, and I can make that is the camera.
Yep.
But do I look off camera left? Do I look off camera right? Where do and then there are distractions. But yep. So it's a work in progress, but as educators, as directors, as leaders, as helmers, as storytellers, we all have to do the balancing and share the verve that we have for this. And knock on wood, it's going okay. I can't retire yet, but I'm in the unions close to 45 years now, and the arc of my journey has gone from you can make a living doing just commercials to calling myself a filmmaker, which essentially is begging for money. And there's a lot out there, money. We have to be patient. We have to be vigilant. We have to find our way and reset. That's what I tell my students. You just have to continue to work. Now, I also heard that a lot of us are doing some writing. I, in fact, have composed a short film. I'm working on a feature. I'm working on an adventure with my writing partner that during this time has given me some tremendous hours and focus and discipline to write and tell the stories with those cameras in my head, even if it's something for the stage. So that's my world. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to stay in New York. I miss LA. I keep getting that little plug to go back out west. But my golf game misses LA a lot. And, so,
you don't miss Miami? So
Not right
Miami's not calling you back?
I don't know what's happened to my town, my state. I don't know what's going on down there. But I don't miss the weather. No, I'm a redhead.
Yeah.
And although the damage was done by the time I was 8 or whatever the thing is, but my dermatologist said, you're probably alive because you don't live in Miami. I was a jock. I was outside. I was playing golf. I was doing things. And so have to be careful.
Just thinking about, what you were saying about resetting. I'll just make the point that, again, isn't that often a default state for people in the performing arts, that at some point, there's got to be a reset, because the career path isn't you join the company at age 20 and retire at age 70 with a gold watch and a pension. And Robin, again, calling back to a very thing that Robin's wise old father said, is that it's always been like this. It's always been a case of theatre is about to die, or the next thing has come along which has knocked the old thing off its pedestal. This is just a little more global and all encompassing, but it's the next hurdle to get over.
Yes, resetting and reinventing. Marika mentioned that she got a little older with her colleague. She's more marketable for certain roles now as she moves forward, and you have to understand it's just not updating your headshot and resume. There's an evolution involved and resetting and
absolutely.
Yes, we have this. I'll use the word callous as if a blister becomes a callous, not in a negative sense, but we have this. If you endure and you stick with this ridiculously delicious industry, you understand that there will be ups and downs and speed bumps, and there's a circuitous route that will take you somewhere else. And quite frankly, I'm not quite sure if you can learn that. I think we may all have something in common, that we're wired that way, that we can take the punches and learn and grow and reset and reinvent.
And it seems like the industry is by default filled with survivors.
Indeed,
filled with people who can take those knocks and keep on going. Although, I mean, we have, during the course of these, I'll use the word sessions, because they did start out as being sort of more like group sessions, but we have talked to younger performers and people who are just starting out in the industry, or aren't that far in their career, for who this really is, the rug's pulled out from underneath them, and the sort of wise words of the elders are that this too will pass, and I guess we see that if you want to be in this space, you'll find a way. Whether you stick with filmmaking, or whether you move on to some other aspect of of the arts. You'll find a way to stick with it.
I'm reminded of a story. When I was still, well, I wasn't still, I'd come back to South Florida for some reason, I forget, but I was staying with the folks for a while, and I had an agent down there. And this is back in the days of phone machines and smoke signals and pigeons, if you remember those days, to get messages. And there was a message left on the machine. And my dad said, Bob, you may want to listen to the message. Well, the message was wardrobe to wear to an audition. Turns out the information was incorrect, and I just exploded. And he said, excuse me? Did you hear yourself? Nobody came into your room at 3 o'clock in the morning and put a gun to your head and said, you're going to become an actor. You're going to get into this industry. So hold on, chucklehead. And I'm not quite sure those were the words he used, but that slapped me right in the face. And I said, you know what? This is a privilege. This is a unique opportunity because it's in me. This is what I want to do. And you have to understand, regardless of your endeavor, that there are going to be highs and lows and ups and downs. This one, unfortunately, is affecting people to the worst degree. So that's the bad part. But here we are. We will survive. Cue the music.
Absolutely.
Am I on?
Yeah. You're on.
You hear me? Okay.
Yes.
And speaking of what my father said that Steve said, repeated, was he was in the theater. My mother was in the theater, and they said to everybody, our son is going into the theater. God knows we tried to keep him out, but he's going in.
Right.
And really, they were very serious about that. I mean, they know, what you're getting into.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, and this cuts quite nicely into this, is what next? What has to happen? What is the, is there a magic formula? I don't know whether you heard my speaker then telling me Bluetooth was connected, but it's obviously having a moment. But what, in your opinion, in the group here, are some of the things that could happen to either support the industry now, or revive the industry to at least having a pulse? Keep it on life support for the time being. Is it theatres reopening? Is it the government funding the arts for a period? Is it potentially targeting performers and all the thousands of people who support the arts, backstage, costumes, every industry that's involved, which often is gig based, a gig based industry. So you're not technically unemployed anymore because you were never employed in the first place. What do you think are some practical steps that could be taken to move things forward?
That's out to everybody, right?
That's out to everybody.
I think the equation as it stands now is we need to convince folks the creativity can continue, the writing can continue. We can reset and gather our things, and when we get the okay, boom. Are folks going to be able to are they going to want to come back? Are they going to be able to come back to fill the seats in the dark, in the theater or in the movie theaters? I know a lot of young students of mine the expression is zoomed out.
Yes.
I don't know how long this can be maintained. It's difficult to, I don't know about those of you that do teach here, but it's exhausting. The energy is just different when you're in a classroom. You feed off of that. Here, I'm going, man, I should have shaved. What the hell?
It's very draining. Yes.
It is.
It is.
And it's, I'm finding that it takes me 3 times as long to make sure that I'm curating effective curriculum.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm not an IT person. So there's just I also really believe that just the all of the aspects of how these devices affect us on energetic levels and mental levels and eye strain, like it's we're doing our best to find the the standby substitute so that we feel like we're still doing something. But Steve, you mentioned government, and I just that's another talk, Robin. But there is something about people needing to feel supported enough that we can kind of get through the pandemic first.
Yes.
Like, can we just make sure that we're all okay? Because trying to find the energy to then make art when you're not okay is just it's I feel like it just strips the spirit, so I think possibly the first level of hard reset that we could be talking about is what it means to be in community. How important gathering is, and I'm not quite sure I have a clear answer to what that can look like in terms of a boots on the ground practice. But I think that is something that could lead us back to, like you're talking about, Bob, the theaters being open with possibly a much deeper appreciation and celebration for what's actually going on in that space in the first place.
I think, Marika, you're hitting kind of on the angst that all of us are experiencing, is what do we make of this? I mean, other generations have gone through great turmoil and great sacrifice. Not only were social structures detethered, but their homes were destroyed, their towns were destroyed, and they had to build up. And beyond that, the great sacrifice they had to put in up to, I'm talking about the war years, for instance, or the other pandemic years.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. My whole family has poverty and starvation and tyranny and dirt floors in our story. So I get
Me too. My grandmother grew up in a sod cabin, these things. My mother remembers being in a sod house, and very, very, very poor. And, every generation has to deal with this, I suppose, on some level. But that's, I guess, the big concern here is like, I'm feeling like, okay, people are going to be ready. We're going to come up with a vaccine. We're always going to have to live with COVID, obviously, but we're going to come up and everybody's going to get back to normal. And everybody's going to be dying for theater, and theater is just going to thrive and take off. And, that's in the back of my mind as to what I hope is going to happen. But it also, on the flip side, I guess what this offers theater artists and artists in general, any performing artists in general, an opportunity. We mentioned the word rebooting and resetting several times throughout this conversation, and I think it's a hard look. I mean, yeah, I'm zoomed out, and I think a lot of us got zoomed out about 3 months ago. And it's been tough.
It's okay for an hour, though, right? Is it okay for an hour?
Yes, it is.
It's okay. It's okay with all your pals. That's good.
Okay, take care. Okay.
But I think we're going to have to. We always have. I mean, I don't know what the face of it's going to be, but God dang it, I know you can't keep an artist down. You can't.
Yeah.
And if we have to adapt to this or something else, and Marika, I hear your concern with my own kids. We're all very screen centric, and there's a lot to worry about there and a lot to concern ourselves with there. But it's just a reality that don't know the other end of it yet. And It's exciting times.
It is, and
Worrisome time.
yeah, one of the things we've seen is innovation. People thinking in new ways to present, or new ways to create, or and depending on how long this goes on, I wonder what's going to pop out of this that's going to persist beyond the end of the pandemic as a new form or a new way to present, or as you say, people are getting sick of Zoom. If kids at school are getting sick of sitting in front of a screen,
and they are,
the screen that they've been stuck in front of streaming whatever from Netflix or YouTube or whatever, if they're getting sick of that, then what's going to is there something good?
Yeah,
that's effectively settling out of that. But Lindsay, I just wanted to come to you for a second. One thing that we saw last year when we did Shrek, and that you saw at Musicals at Richter, was that kind of starting point for kids in a theatre environment, in a community theatre environment. And you spoke to this yourself, that's really where you came from. The community theatre, the getting up on a stage and doing the dance. To me, that's something that's lost now. Right now, we're losing that ability for kids to get involved in theatre and get involved in performing, as well as that associated, not just performing, but getting together in little huddles and finding their tribe and finding out a little bit more of how they come. Do you think there's any way that we can replace that at this time, or do you think there's just going to be a gap of kids who would have come along who didn't?
That's a tough question. There's nothing like the community that comes from being in live theater or being around others in a creative way, even in a school way. I mean, I have two young daughters, a 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old, and we've made the choice for our 4-year-old to not go to preschool this year, right? So she's not getting that human interaction because we've chosen that she should be safe. Like, mom's not going into work, so she's not. So I feel for children. I feel so badly that these young kids are meeting people on a screen and not being able to get that human interaction, which is so essential for their development. But on the artistic sense, I mean, there's nothing like that sense of community when you come together to create, going back to our production that we did, and just seeing the starting point and the end point, and just the fulfillment it can bring young folk and old folks. But we're a resilient bunch of people, and we will find a way until we can be back. I really do think that the arts and the performing arts will be back, and it's just how we manage it between now and then is what's really essential. And even though I think we're all reaching out to people on Zoom and teaching, it's important, I think, to keep a positive mindset as I approach my students in my class and say, there's still a heck of a lot to learn from this, and just trying to maintain that positivity, because So many people have worked so hard their whole lives to train to be on stage or to be in front of a camera, that, you know, this is an industry and a profession that's really valued. And I think it's important for us to kind of keep going and to make sure that our value is heard when we get butts and seats in our theaters. Yeah.
I could piggyback on that too, Lindsay. I feel the exact same way, that there's, if anything, I do see that there could be, you know, and there is really a gap, but in terms of the teaching and in terms of sort of, you know, not being able to keep an artist down, you know, that idea, there's so much conflict going on for each of us in the gap that I think this is an opportunity to write really good stories about how we get through the crisis, or, you know, individual stories that, you know, the way we now look at historical fiction, you know, as having fact-based information feeding story. And I think this is that moment for us now, is what do we come out of this wanting to tell? And that we do have the opportunity to sort of tell that the triumph of our time, how we make it through this can then feed back into that ever popular myth, which is, you know, how do you hang in there and overcome?
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to bring up, and anybody can chime in on this. I was listening to somebody saying, how much are we going to miss Broadway if we have we have $600 in our wallet that we did not spend on Hamilton? You know, are we going to be like, I wanted to spend that $600 on Hamilton and I'm missing that, and when's that going to happen? And or are they like, I've got the money, I'm psyched, and we don't need these anymore? You know, that's a dangerous question. I don't know if anybody wants to comment.
Well, Broadway, I mean, one thing that I hate about Broadway is the price, how it's so not egalitarian, it is so not equitable. It is an elitist kind of institution to a certain extent. And I refuse to pay the prices. If I can't get a cheap rush ticket or, you know, some kind of lottery giveaway, I'm not gonna do it. It's not worth it. I've some of the best theater, you know, you're talking to one of the, you know, co-creators of the New York International Fringe Festival. Some of the best, you know, theater I've ever seen has been in some storefront dive down on the Lower East Side. Well, conversely, some of the worst theater I've ever seen has also been in the city. But nothing compares to when it's big and bad. And so Broadway is that double-edged sword. Some extraordinary theater and stagecraft. You know, it's a wonder what you can do with, you know, millions and millions of dollars, right? But what I've always found very exciting is what you can do with just a handful of dollars. And that's the spirit of it, right? So I don't know, maybe Broadway will, I don't know, get knocked down a notch or two. I don't know. Maybe we're going to have to start small again. Maybe we're going to have to rely on that stuff. I mean, also, Steve, you asked about, you know, the children's stuff and how we engage, and our local children's theater is going to create theater out in our local forest. You know, Inwood Hill Park in the northern tip of Manhattan is, you know, old growth forest. Well, second growth forest, I should say. And we're going to do Robin Hood. We're going to adapt the play, and we're going to take the kids out there. We're going to rehearse it out in the woods, and we're going to stitch it together with some iPhones, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just a whole new venture. I mean, I think, again, we have to look at the opportunity that this is going to offer us and just do it. I mean, we can't do anything else. We can't just sit here and bemoan the fact that we can't be in a room with, you know, our besties and making theater. And, you know, we got to find something else that'll tie us over and still create that community. Right, Lindsay, you were talking about that sense of community, and Marika, that's the most important thing, is how are we going to continue to develop and create and foster community? And whether or not that's in person, which is the best way, and we know that, or in some kind of hybrid way, getting together in a park and rehearsing a scene and letting the whole world watch us. Who cares? Maybe we'll grow in a new way because we're doing it that way. I don't know.
The thing about that is the essential businesses stayed open, right? My wife works for one of those. So through this COVID thing, the essential, and then what I read about Marika doing in the Sorbonne, that stuff is healing powers and stuff like that. Sounds essential to me. So I think I'm piggybacking on what you're saying, Rik, about the Broadway experience is, what's crucial theater,
Completely. I think that Robin is the foundation of the whole lecture that I gave. Is all about how we are in a time where it's really important to remember that the reason myth and story exists in the human condition is because it's the way we mark our experience through metaphor, and we tell that to each other, and that is a source of well-being. And when we don't have it, when it gets taken out of school programs, when we start to, like you said, Rik, when we make it a boutique experience, or, something that we feel like we can't afford. If you can't afford to sit and experience a story about what it is to be a human being, there's something really missing in the way we relate to each other, and evolve, as human beings, as a social animal.
I understand what you mean, and it's like the notion that the economy isn't the stock market and the stock market isn't the economy. Broadway isn't theatre, but it's not the theatre.
Right.
However, having said that, it is an indicator of it is the most visible indicator of the health of the industry to a lot of people. So whilst that, I think everyone's nodding in agreement with Rik about the economics of Broadway and how much it costs to see a show, and whether or not that's always the best theatre. Everyone's nodding away, saying yeah. But it is the indicator. It is the indicator, and it is something that I think may well be the thing that flips the switch for the rest of the industry. When Broadway seemed to be ascending, that effectively is the okay for the rest of the industry to do whatever. It's an observation. It's an observation. And Bob, you were looking like you were either wanting to say something or were ready to run away.
Forfeit is another word that keeps popping into my head this evening. You can make a movie. I don't do that. I don't know how to do this. You can make a movie with your phone.
Yeah.
And that is, you're going to get your clarity, you're going to get your shots, but it's a different mindset. As an actor, I'd like to see a big panty. I like to have that thing pointed at me. I like to know where it stands, and it's still art. I appreciate that. And it's not expensive, or it's not as expensive, and you can get to the same goal. Real quick story. A friend of mine she graduated from Stella. She's a former student. She's a fine writer. She's written a story that she wants to make into a serial. There's a great deal of space with streaming. There's a whole lot of room now for new and wonderful bits of information and stories, right? She wants to be in it. Her partner is a producer, and that woman has gone out and gotten some money. Well, now they wanted to get a B-lister, quote unquote, because they don't need an A guy. They need a B-lister male actor. They found some guy they like. They met with him, and the rest was now left up to his management. He came back and said, "Well, yes, I will come to New York for the week of shooting, but I'd like to come for 3 weeks. You have to bring my family, and I have to fly first class, and I won't do this unless I get the thing. I got to get the Cheerios with the broccoli and the special pillow, and then the flying monkey will take me from LaGuardia, and we have to forfeit. If we're going to be in the arts together, we know what it's like to not work constantly. My dad got a check every other Friday. I don't do that. I don't know what that's about. We have to pool this together, and unions are certainly, shame on you. And I'm in all of them. Yikes. Oh,
but you were in all of them.
Yeah.
We got to join this together. So
yeah, we've reached the end of our time, but that's exactly a sentiment that we've definitely heard, that certainly in the performing arts, and I'm sure in other areas as well, that it's the arts as a whole supports the arts. Everyone on this call is passionate about what they're doing. If you're seeing someone struggle, there's a need to help that person up, and we've absolutely heard that through all these sessions that we've had, that everyone cares. Yeah, I'm sure some people don't, but on the whole, the community is lifting the rest of the community, and that gives me a lot of hope for when things start to free up, that anyone who's kind of fallen by the wayside and is struggling, there's potentially a helping hand to get back into the game, as it were. So, Robin, would you like to say anything further before we break off?
No. I really appreciate everybody coming on. This is getting more attention, and I hope you guys come and see the rest of. We're going through November at this point, having some people come back, which is great. But yeah, I mean, what I'd like to say is, this is everybody saying this is like this program would never happen without COVID. So this particular program, yes. I don't want COVID, but I'm just saying the connections that are being made would never have happened. And you could say that about anything, but I want to say that I appreciate that for working out. So thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much.
Talk to everybody.
Thank you, Marika. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Rik. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, everybody on Facebook Live who's watching us. Remember, this program will be available on the Sherman Players Facebook page tomorrow. So you can watch it again then, watch it as many times as you like, and come back again next week, same time, for another set of fantastic guests, just like the ones we had tonight. So all that's left for me to say is good night, and say good night, Robin.
Good night, Robin.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.